Hello and welcome to the Final Straight F1 podcast with Ben and Tonda.
And today we're looking at the story of the 2024 Belgian Grand Prix, but also at the season as a whole so far, because we are right in the middle of the summer break, and it truly feels like two completely different seasons that we've had so far, and there is a lot ahead that we also might try to predict. So let's get into it. The Belgian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
What did you think of this amazing race, at least in my opinion?
That's interesting. I thought, we're getting spoiled, I think,
Yeah.
right now. But I still think it was a very good race, very good, interesting qualifying because we had a
Yeah.
wet qualifying going into the weekend. One important news is that Verstappen had a 10-place grid penalty for taking a new ICE,
Yeah.
new internal combustion engine, which definitely, shuffled the cards. Because as we saw, he had a dominant performance in qualifying, at
Yeah.
least, right? So, how did you see the whole, qualifying evolving, and how did you see that? Because it was wet.
It was wet. It was changing conditions a little bit, but I mean, it was nice to see Charles Leclerc perform again after a bit of a dry spell, so to speak, in the wet. It was really nice seeing him in pole again, or P2, and then on pole after Verstappen got the penalty. But I think it's also good to point out that the penalty, I think, showed really how much has changed since 2022, 2023, especially with Max Verstappen. Because if you remember, this is not the first time Max has taken the 10th place grid penalty for for the engine change at Spa. But the last time, or the last few times, we were just counting the laps and waiting for him to take P1 again. And
Yeah.
that happened.
Yeah, I think 2022, it
Yeah.
was lap 14 where
Yeah.
he went from P14 to, or
Yeah.
lap 18, something like that. It was before even the half
Yeah.
of the race. And he just went from P14 to P1, which didn't happen this time, right? Just shows how much closer the racing is. And also one important fact that perhaps many people underestimated was that Spa had a bit of asphalt resurfacing,
Yeah.
right? At least in like one big part or one sector. I think the whole track was not resurfaced, but a good part of it was. And that probably, we'll talk about it later, but I'm not sure if it really contributed to a better racing, at least in
And the
overtaking.
DRS zones were also changed, right?
Were they?
I think so. They were either shortened or changed in a different way.
Interesting.
But we didn't see that many overtakes.
Yeah, it seemed like because Piastri, when he, after the race, he tried talking to Hamilton in the
Yeah.
cool down room. He said that like whenever you got close to a car in front of you, it was impossible
Yeah.
to overtake, which, we did see quite a few times, but it seemed like you needed a much bigger delta
Yeah.
to overtake, like more to the likes of Hungary, right? Like it became closer to that rather than as a Spa we know it, kind of straight DRS
Yeah.
bank overtake. But I still think that even though we didn't get probably as much overtaking as we were promised, which to be fair, I think that aided the drivers in front of Verstappen, I still think it was interesting race in terms of the tactics, in terms of top three teams being super close.
Yeah. Even top four, I would say. I think all of the
Fair.
top eight drivers had, I don't want to say a decent shot, but there was possibility of them winning in case of a lucky safety car, whatever. And that's because their pace was just so similar. Like this was the first time in a long time where we've seen the top eight really be so similar on pace. Like nobody, because usually you see after the first few laps, you see the top three, top four,
Yeah.
whatever, pull away, and there's a gap of like at least 5-10 seconds. Of course, towards the end of the race, there were pretty big gaps. But in the first half and overall, they stayed pretty close together, which made for some very exciting situations, especially with the strategies.
100%.
Especially with George Russell opting for the one-stop.
Yeah. That was very interesting.
I think nobody expected for it to pay off as much as it did.
Yeah, it was, and it was also very random because we were hearing the rumors of, oh, it might even be with the track resurfacing, it might even be a 3-stop, right? And
Yeah.
they said that it's not that far off and that a 1-stop is merely impossible. But it again went to show that, if it was the Spa of last year, sure, I think, Russell would have probably had lesser chance of pulling it off, at least on track. Not speaking after the race, right? But yeah, I think with the overtaking being so difficult, it just played into his strategy, into his cards, and we had an interesting battle in front as well. Like let's talk about the start, right? Like, because we had 3 different teams in the first 3 positions.
Yeah.
We had Leclerc in P1, right? Pole position. Everybody thinking, is it going to be the usual of Leclerc pole and Verstappen win? But this time it was very different. And we had Perez in P2, actually, which he almost went out in Q2. And, it was wet quali. So did the 2 Mercedes and 2 Ferraris almost, but he was still P2.
Has been the focus of many of our conversations in the past few episodes, with him underperforming severely despite having his contract renewed. And, or maybe because of his contract being renewed and not having to worry about that. But either way, he wasn't doing great. But now he managed to put it into he started P2, but again, something happened and he ended, was it P8?
Yeah, and he was very far off. He was behind his teammate Verstappen by, I think, because he then boxed for the fastest lap, right? Which, then puts the result into a different perspective. But still, I was looking at the, not the standings, but the race deltas, and he was still 15 seconds off of Verstappen with, the same similar strategy. He was on the mediums in the 3rd stint, I think. And that's not a good look when your teammate starts P11, you start P2, and you just fall like a potato. It's turn 1. We had Hamilton with a great start. Perez tried to fight back, but...
And
yeah,
there have been rumors of Sergio Perez being dropped during the summer break and being replaced by Daniel Ricciardo.
True.
There have been rumors that there was apparently a shot or a video of Daniel and Max
with Horner and
dealing in a helicopter or something. But apparently, or supposedly according to some sources, Liberty Media have said you can't do this because we wouldn't sell tickets to the American Grand Prix, to Dakota, to the Mexican Grand Prix.
Oh my God!
All of these, because Sergio Perez is, despite, of course, he's still a very good driver. All of them are in F1, and he's by far, far from being the worst. But of course, people have been talking about his performance, but he's still extremely popular, especially in his home country of Mexico.
Yep.
And people go to the race. A lot of people go to the races just to see him.
Yeah. Imagine the scenario, right? Like he gets the boot from Red Bull. I don't think if he would be replaced by Ricciardo or if he would be replaced by whomever in Red Bull, I don't see a scenario where he would race.
Yeah.
Right. So that is the main point.
He'd be gone.
He'd be gone
from the grid.
Yeah, at least for this year. Guaranteed. He wouldn't go to VCarb.
No.
He would just, imagine the scenes in Mexico. Imagine if Verstappen won in Mexico and Perez was not his teammate. And maybe Ricciardo would be, or Lawson, they would be on the podium with him. That would be an interesting
atmosphere. I mean, of course, this is all just speculation and hearsay. But it's something to think about. It's
Yeah, but I think they confirmed, I think it was after the race, that he's going to be staying with the team, and then there will be no major changes within the team, at least until the end of the season.
To be fair, Red Bull, it happens pretty often that they say one thing and next week something else happens.
Yeah.
Also, Adrian Newey, the man who is looking for a job or isn't, but the man who a lot of jobs are looking for Adrian Newey, let's put it like that.
Yep.
Apparently he's in close talks with Aston Martin.
Which is surprising. To an extent it makes sense, because Honda is going to be the power unit supplier of Aston Martin from 2026 onwards, which I think I think it's no secret that Newey was not a fan of Renault's power units, when Red Bull had them back in the day. That's why he stepped away a little bit for some time. And he is a fan of the Honda units. And Lawrence Stroll, we know, he's a big businessman, and they're buying a lot of new facilities, which could be something interesting. And of course, money for them, not an issue, because I heard it's around $400 million for, what was it, like 3 or 4 year contract. But on the other hand, we also, and I think they're also saying that they're in process of signing Verstappen for 26.
Well, that would be, if they pull that off.
That's a masterclass by Stroll. But we've also heard earlier in the season that, the Ferrari contract with Newey is almost done. So
I think according to the speculations, according to the rumors, Newey wanted so much money that Ferrari was just like, we can't afford this. We're paying Hamilton like $100 million a year, and apparently Newey also wanted a lot of control over the development.
I think that's
which
the main
is understandable because he's he has a lot of experience and everything.
True.
But apparently Fred Vasseur just thought it's not worth it.
Yeah.
But apparently Lawrence Stroll, the guy with the money, thought, well, if you want, how much do you want? 400 million, 500 million?
He's like, how much do you want? Yes. Like, okay. But I've heard about the conditions. I've heard that, or at least I've read about the speculated conditions that Newey would like to, in terms of the car development, he would like to be able to overrule the team principal and CEO, right? Which, we know Newey is the greatest car designer of all time, most likely.
Possibly.
Would you do it?
First, if, being Lawrence Stroll with the team not getting any better, let's put it like that. Aston Martin they've been getting worse, if anything. So I think it's not a safe bet, but it's something. Ferrari, they're working on something. Yeah, they fell off, but just bringing in Adrian Newey, who would be able to do anything with the car, it might be a risk, even with someone of Adrian Newey's, capabilities. So personally, I understand why Lawrence Stroll would accept these terms, but only time will show whether that's something that he will regret or will be lauded for.
We shall see. But I think still people forget that it's not everything. One member, I know, like he gets a lot of credit and deservedly. Like he is genuinely amazing, right? But he was beaten many times. Like he was in Red Bull since 2006, 2007, somewhere around that, and he has not won with the RBR car only from like 2010. They've won, and in 2014, Mercedes ran away for 8 consecutive seasons, right? And he had some failures, for example, in McLaren, where there was this, I don't know what was the model, but it was like MP24, something like this. And it was where the car was failing all the time and crashing all the time, like in the tests, because they have never really raced it, because he wanted to make such a skinny engine, because it's one of his domains, making very skinny exits. And so I think that I understand the POV of Ferrari. Yeah. Hypothetically speaking, we don't know if it's true. Yeah. But I would understand why it's difficult to give up such a
because this change will now show how much of what's being said about Adrian Newey is true and how much of it is just myth and legends that
Yeah.
have been built by others and by him as well. But 'cause I think if he manages to pull Aston Martin out of the trenches into a race-winning team again, he will, without a doubt, be considered the greatest if he's not already.
Yeah.
But another bombshell that hit the paddock the other day was Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz finally picking a team for the 2025 season after months and months of speculation and indecision. Carlos Sainz will now officially race for the Williams racing team.
Yeah. What did you think of the announcement? What was your initial thought?
Well, I think that was the most likely option, and it's been kind of expected for a long time now. So it was mostly like, what took you so long? I guess contract negotiations but funnily enough, it was also announced that Mattia Binotto
Oh yeah.
would become the team principal at Audi,
Which
which
probably deterred him to an extent
would
because
have been funny. Would have been funny to
yeah, the reunion.
the reunion, yeah. But well, question is this all part of James Vowell's great master plan to bring Williams up to the
Yeah,
forefront?
but would you say it's because there's different perspectives to look at this, right?
Yeah.
Is this the perspective of where you're thinking, right? Is Williams cooking something for 2026 or 2025? Probably not. But he's not gonna do better in a Williams next year than he's in the Ferrari,
No,
and
definitely.
like that's
Let's
not
hope. Let's hope
that's
from
not
a
likely.
Ferrari fan perspective, I hope.
True. Well, we'll see. But and it's difficult to imagine like how you're supposed to know what's going to happen in 2026. But the second perspective is because also you have James Vowles, who is a very good and skilled person to be around. But the second perspective is with the contract, and apparently he has an interesting clause in his contract that if he was to be offered a contract from a significantly better team, at least like 2026 onwards, he has the right to leave, which is kind of strategically good because you get to see how it pans out. Because whatever the stacking order is right now could be completely flipped around in 2026. You might have one dominant party. You might have the Aston Martin being amazing. You never know, right? So would you say it's more of a strategic decision, or it's a lot based on performance and that he actually believes the team is going to do well?
I think it might have been strategic because, of course, the seats have been filling up for next year, and he knew that he was like the options were getting slimmer. With Mercedes saying they probably won't Antonelli,
likely
Red Bull.
He's been performing very well recently.
Confirming Perez, and so on. Then if he managed to actually get the clause of if somebody better offers me a seat, then I will go there. Then it's a win-win situation for him. He gets a seat for next year, but he's not locked in for any of the future seasons. And if it looks like Audi are performing better, or I wonder what the criteria is for a team that is performing much better. Like if it's probably points, standings, but
it could be by how many places in the constructor standings.
Probably.
So then he might nerf them.
It's just gonna crash every race.
It's like, god damn, by how many points do I need to just drag it back so they
Race to
but
the bottom.
I still think it's strategic.
Yeah.
But some part of me also thinks that he might genuinely believe that the performance of Williams, and okay, let's not take into consideration teams like Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes, because that's where the doors were pretty much closed, or they were not widely open in terms of the contract negotiations. Because we know Mercedes wants to sign Antonelli like sooner rather than later. And they probably wouldn't be. It could be the same situation as why Hamilton left, because he didn't get offered a
Yep.
contract he wanted to. So he might, even though he might just step into Mercedes, he would be already with his one leg out, because he would be feeling the pressure that
Yeah.
internally would come. But we want to compare these teams to, or Williams to, probably Alpine, Sauber,
Haas.
right? Yeah, Haas. And out of these teams, that is, like, for me, that's definitely the best choice. What would you say? Because also the power unit does a lot.
I think this is an interesting question, because what has been quite interesting to see has also been the impact of everything that's been going on James Vowles.
Yeah.
And specifically, I mean, the public perception of James Vowles. Because at least from what I've seen on social media and the circles, because James Vowles, I feel like last year, or maybe even the year before, he was considered like the god of the team principles. Like he was always like the calm one, the data-driven one.
Yeah.
Data-driven, that's the number one thing.
Yeah,
He's the one that's going to bring Williams back to where they belong. And of course, that's no easy task for, with a team like Williams, who have been backmarkers for quite some time now.
Yeah.
But still, you'd expect bigger steps from them, or bigger improvement, especially in this season, because last year they were looking pretty good. They beat Haas, right? They were doing well strategically. Alex Albon snatched some points.
True.
And it was all going well. But at some point you've got to ask, like, okay, James, we're ready. like what's up? Look at Haas.
Yeah.
Gunther Steiner left before the start of the season, and everybody was like, oh, they're gonna be dead last. There's no direction, there is no aim, what are they gonna do? And now look at them.
Yeah.
P6, like twice in a row by Nico Hulkenberg.
Amazing performance.
They're doing great.
Upgrades, mid-season upgrades never happened really before.
Yeah, because in a vacuum you could say, oh, Williams, all the teams are struggling. But when you compare them to teams like this, and also there's this facet of Logan Sargent, and the way I think some people take issue with the way that he's been treated. Remember the chassis thing?
Yeah.
The broken chassis, let's give it to Alex Albon. By no means am I saying that Logan Sargent is the greatest driver of all time or on the grid.
He's not Latifi.
And it's pretty understandable why he would be dropped by the Williams team. He's just not performing that great. But I feel like a lot of people are not happy with the way that he's just... It seems that James Vowles doesn't care about Sargent, and he just drops him at the earliest opportunity, and despite not having a lot of results to show for it.
But yeah, to be honest, I still think that Sargent got a lot of chances.
Yeah,
it's
no,
not.
that's
it's
not.
not.
No.
I agree. Like
that.
There are people who say, yeah, there were many rumors that said that they're not talking to each other, which then Sargent came out and said that it's BS.
Yeah.
Which, rumors are rumors, but still, he's already 1.5 seasons in, and he hasn't shown a special.
Yeah.
He hasn't shown something special. Even like, you have an understanding if you just see a driver, because it's been, let's call it, it's been almost 40 races with Sargent, and if a driver has one amazing race in 15 races, if he shows these sparks of opportunities, I think that's where the driver is safe, right?
Yeah.
Because then with experience, you learn how to extract more of this performance. But I don't think Logan has shown much potential.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to be harsh to him, but, we saw how Albon, his teammate, how his season went in Red Bull. He was a rookie in 2019, and in the first half he was in Toro Rosso, right? And he was performing very well, right?
Yep.
He was beating, I think at that time it was Daniel Kvyat, and he then was promoted to Red Bull, but he was still a rookie, and he had a very difficult time to adapting to that car. And after the 2020 season, he was sacked, which many people see it as harsh, but he also didn't have these performances where he was shining. You know, if he had 1-2 races, which is probably something that also Red Bull is searching for in Perez right now. So, yeah, Williams, I still think they made a good decision with Sainz, because who wouldn't want to sign Carlos Sainz with the knowledge of Ferrari?
Well, of course,
right?
that's clearly signing Carlos Sainz is the better option.
Good data for James Vowles.
Good data for James Vowles, but we've also, where would you hear about the Excel sheets? I don't know. Well, let's just hope that this is all part of the plan and that it will help Williams as a team, and it will show that James Vowles has always known what he's doing in that sense.
True.
But if we come back to the race in Belgium, Lando Norris, again, he was P3, wasn't he?
Yep. P3
at the start of the race, wasn't he?
No,
P4.
Lando Norris was P4.
Oh yeah, P4.
Yes.
But
Yes. He was
didn't stay there for long.
Yeah.
Again,
A shocking start.
Shocking start, or should we say a typical start for Lando Norris at this point. Which, you know, he's not doing that great when it comes to turn 1, lap 1. Usually when he starts on pole, doesn't end that well for him.
Never.
Never.
Not yet.
No, not yet. We'll have to prove us wrong. Of course, we hope that he will. But yeah, he touched the gravel and then he just tumbled down the order.
Yeah, and I don't know, for me, because we talked about it in the previous podcast, right? After Hungary, we said he needs to be taking, advantage of these moments for where Verstappen is not there. And last race, he didn't position himself, like he was on pole, right? In Hungary, he was on pole. He positioned himself to win the race, which is the most he can do, no doubt. But he lost the start.
Yeah.
He lost to Oscar Piastri, and he didn't take advantage of probably his 2 biggest chances to gain points on Verstappen, because Verstappen in this race started in P11 and Norris started in P4. And within 3 laps, they were, Verstappen was behind Lando Norris, and that just begs the question:
at the end of the race,
is Norris ready to fight for the championship?
That is a very big
or does
question.
he make too many mistakes? Because it's been quite a few times this season that we have said, if only this happened, next time Norris will get it. And it happened quite a few times.
Lando Norris, they're calling him in some circles. Not me. I wouldn't call him that. But it is a good point because it's not just this, right? It's the strategy calls.
Yeah.
That, of course, that's not always just his fault. But we still all remember Sochi 2021.
Yeah. Even Silverstone this year.
Yeah. But what we have to do is hope that he will turn this around. And
he even said himself, I think recently in an interview, he said, well, I think I'm not ready to fight for the championship because look at me, I still make too many mistakes. And
which is fair play to him for acknowledging that.
He's right. We don't usually, like, if you remember 2021, there weren't that many silly mistakes by either Hamilton or Verstappen. There were mistakes in tricky conditions, right?
Like you had Hamilton in Baku, of course.
Yeah, that was arguably it was a difficult error to really describe because he flipped the switch accidentally, which he didn't know that flicked, and it was brake magic, right?
Yep.
And brake magic, what it does, it just switches all the brakes into the front, so you brake mostly by your front tires, which is good when you're behind the safety car, what happened in Baku, right? Because you get heat into the front tires, which is difficult to do because you can't do burnouts for the front tires. But when you're racing and the brake bias, the brakes just suddenly you just lock up and you just can't hold the brake force. And mainly when you don't know it, you just slam on the brakes, with the colder tires. And yeah, so yeah, there were arguably these incidents that maybe weren't
I
exactly.
can see that it's
Yeah.
still very fresh in your
Yeah,
mind.
I can still see the "see it again" memes just going straight, and it hurts till this day a little bit.
Yeah, but
a lot.
You're correct that we didn't see a lot of these smaller mistakes
Yeah.
that season. And now it really is a question, because if McLaren remain the fastest car, which they arguably have been over the past few races, over the rest of the season, and Red Bull don't come out with big upgrades, can Lando Norris pull it off and take the championship fight to Max?
Well,
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But it always changes.
it really, like, as you just said it right now, it really reminds me a little bit of 2009 season of Braun GP, where the first, what was it, like 7 races, like 6 of them Button has won
Yeah.
in the Braun, but they did not have much development, right? For obvious reasons. In that time, it was difficult financially in that team because it was bought from Honda, and
Yeah.
I think it was Honda, and yeah, it was a difficult time. And then Red Bull started to catch up, because at that time there was an innovation called the double diffuser, which was the secret of the Braun GP. And then Adrian Newey found out about this interesting tactic and implemented it into his cars. And then we suddenly had the catch up, right? Like Button built up the lead of the championship, and then without the upgrades, the Red Bull was faster and faster, and he just had to hold on for his dear life. And I don't think personally we're going to see this same thing, because I've heard already that there are plans for big upgrades for Red Bull for the likes of Singapore.
To be fair, we have heard this from Red Bull before in the past few races. They said Hungary, I think, they would bring a lot of upgrades.
Well, they did.
They did, but
Only for high downforce tracks.
yeah, but will it be enough?
Hasn't worked.
Will it be enough? It hasn't worked.
Hasn't worked that great.
Will it work during the rest of the season?
Yeah.
I think what's going against Norris in this is because he's not. There are not 2 teams fighting. It's 4 teams now.
Yeah.
Which means, it's even having the fastest car, you still have to beat a lot more people.
Yeah.
To actually get the most points every single race.
They're just taking points away from each other.
Points away from each other. So, of course, Ferrari, they had a very bad streak with the triple header. Now they're pulling it. They're pulling it together. At least it seems like. Question is, how will their development go? Of course, the summer break is a big question mark for all the teams. But we've seen that teams can turn around things pretty quickly. Look at Mercedes. Because we also haven't mentioned Lewis Hamilton won. Lewis Hamilton won the Belgian Grand Prix.
He's the only driver apart from Max Verstappen who has won multiple Grand Prix this season.
Look at him. He won in Silverstone. He won here. George Russell won in Austria. Although, of course, that was due to Norris and Max colliding. But at the start of the season, we were laughing at Mercedes because they were doing so badly.
They were off. They didn't put they were trying different things with their front wing, and it seemed like the excuses were almost done, because it seemed like no upgrade they did correlated in terms of their wind tunnel and track performance. But look where they have come. Like in Silverstone, they've won on par.
And Ferrari, on the other hand, they were this clear second at the start of the year, but they fell off, and now they're the 4th or 3rd, 4th. But what I'm trying to say is, we've seen big changes in the way that these teams perform based on the development.
Exactly.
And there is still some time left in the season. Like it's not over. And the development is not over yet.
It's far from over.
There's less time than at the start of the season, so
everything is possible.
Depending on how their data is, how their simulator correlation is going, it might stay the same. But if Ferrari improve again, and if Mercedes keep this up, then I feel like they will take points from Norris because Leclerc is also not that far behind.
Yeah.
Not saying that he is in the fight.
I mean, he finished in front of Norris, right?
Yeah, but he did finish in front of Norris, so it's
and on the podium, technically.
Technically.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your point. Like, it's very difficult. It's one thing when one team is ahead for some time and then the other one overtakes them and is streaking the points. But in this case, we've got 4 teams that are capable of winning. Depending, like at this point, I think we can say it could be as well like track dependent because we have had Monaco, which you remember very well, and
I remember.
And like it was yesterday. But yeah, it definitely sets up the rest of the season in a very interesting way because Mercedes in these last few races have been like on it.
Because just to underline that point, to quote from some statistics from F1analysis.com, Mercedes and especially Lewis Hamilton scored 80% of all his points in 2024 in the last 7 GPs and only 20% in the first.
What about Verstappen?
With Verstappen, Red Bull as a whole is 65% in the first 7 and only 35 in the last 7. With Sergio Perez having the opposite statistic of Hamilton and having 80% of his points be in the first 7 races. So it really turned around quite a lot. And I mean, if it goes on like this.
Yeah, it was funny that after the race, Gunther Steiner asked Hamilton if he's in the championship fight, and Hamilton was like, no, I'm not. But I mean, he's realistic at least, but probably he was kind of pissed off at that time because why don't we get straight into it? Because Russell at that time, everyone thought won the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Which, because as you said, he was going for a one-stop strategy, contrary to everybody else apart from probably 1 or 2 other drivers. And it was interesting because Hamilton was controlling the race. He overtook Perez in the first turn. A brilliant move. Overtook Leclerc pretty soon and convincingly, covered him off at every single opportunity. He was just managing the race. Yeah. I don't even think he was pushing as much on like flat out. But then the radio came that, I mean, he mentioned in his radio that, guys, my tires were still okay. Yeah. Like I had some tires left, so why don't pull me in like too early, right? But they tried to cover Leclerc, I guess. But then, even though he was P2, he was catching up a certain car, and it was the car of George Russell.
Yeah. And George Russell just managed to pull that Mercedes car and into first place with just a 1-stop, which unfortunately didn't result in a race victory in the end because he was disqualified. His car was underweight by 1.5 kilograms, which resulted in Hamilton taking the win. But still, it was, I think, even though that he was ahead by quite a lot, most people, at least I was, expecting Hamilton to catch up, and being on fresher tires just...
Yeah, that was my question. What did you think at the moment of...
Yeah.
Because Hamilton was, when he was told in the radio that he's, George is 1-stopping, he was like, okay, I'm going to push now. And he was gaining about 7-8 tenths a lap, which that's quite a lot. And mainly in the second sector only. Did you think how did you think it was going to pan out?
I thought that he was going to overtake George, and that even maybe Piastri will get in front of him as well. But then we saw how tricky it really was to overtake. Yeah. Even after coming up from Eau Rouge and after that straight, Hamilton just wasn't getting close because Russell was on it, and his exits were great, and he was.
A great drive.
It was a great drive from George Russell.
He didn't make a mistake when he was chased by Hamilton, right?
Must have been gutting for him to
lose
the victory. But also, let's also just mention how close the top 3 were.
Yeah, it was insane. They were split by like 1.5 seconds in the finish line.
And Oscar Piastri was 6 tenths behind Lewis Hamilton
Yeah.
at the finish line, which means it ended up being P2 behind P1. And
That's insane.
6 tenths. And overall, the gaps have been getting so much smaller. Like,
Yeah.
Again, first race
crazy.
of the year, it was 20. But since then, it's been, I think the average was like 2.5 or something. Now.
Yeah, it's been like
Or
ever
under,
since
or a lot of them have been under.
ever since Imola, I think
Yeah.
it was very close. And yeah, like looking at the drive from Russell, it was, I think the Mercedes, both drivers had an amazing drive.
Yeah.
Hamilton arguably a little bit screwed by the strategy, which it's difficult
It was
because
a risky strategy.
it was a
to
risky
be
strategy
honest.
because we know, and the teams know, because when we touch like upon the disqualification, right? Teams know that there is no like cool down lap after the Spa race, and therefore you don't have the opportunity to collect the rubber on the side of the track. I mean, I'm not an expert at this, but I don't think 1.5 kilos would appear just from the rubber
Yeah.
purely. I still think that there's a certain underfueling, or at least Russell lost a little bit too much weight. Something happened, and ultimately it's the decision and the responsibility of the team, right?
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe if he would have pitted, he could have at least salvaged a podium.
Question is, if Oscar Piastri would have stayed out for the one stop,
Yep.
would we have a 2-time winner in him now? Possibly with a broken rib as well.
Yeah, and
Let's mention
that's the thing, right? He just recently shared with the whole world that he actually had a broken rib since, I believe, the race of Hungary.
Yeah, and he won with a broken rib.
Yeah, he won with a broken rib, which is
And now,
crazy.
now also imagine, that makes everything so much worse. We talked about it last time, but when you Lando Norris is in front of you, you were leading, you get undercut, and you're like, they're telling you, just wait, Oscar, just wait. We're telling him to, and the whole time your rib is broken, and you're like, oh fuck, I can't breathe.
It's like I can't
Makes
catch
it
my
even
breath.
worse. Yeah.
He wouldn't even brace himself for an overtake. Just breathing in would hurt. But yeah, I guess like with the adrenaline, it's a little bit different.
But I
But
wonder, do you think that was a factor in the, like,
I don't know,
Lando?
it could be.
Lando,
Like,
you know, like they couldn't. I don't know. Maybe I don't know why they couldn't say it, but maybe it was like, Lando, you know, the guy has a broken bone. He was leading. Just let him pass.
yeah, probably not with this one, but I think it must have had a little bit of an impact on his
the team
performance.
must have known. It's not like he.
I don't know. Probably.
Or hopefully, it's not like.
Probably. Like,
Just.
like
If not, Oscar Piastri is very hard.
if it was in Red Bull, and you would have to go tell Helmut Marko that you have a broken rib, I probably would guess that he wouldn't share it until it's healed.
Dr. Marco.
Yeah, I think that was Daniel Ricciardo's one of his stories, right? He was testing Formula 3s, Formula 2s, or something like this, and when he was testing, he was bike riding and he broke his wrist, right? And when he said it to Helmut Marko, he just picked his phone up. He said something like, "Yeah, you idiot," and he just hung up the phone. So he appeared into the racetrack with a broken wrist, and he just he still nailed it. And but yeah, I still think it's a factor. And Piastri said it himself after the race that it was super hard to overtake on the track.
Yeah.
Which
No, but he did manage though.
he
There
got
was a
close.
fight
He
with
overtook.
Leclerc.
Yeah, he overtook
with-
Perez, I believe, as
Yeah.
well.
And
That was a pretty solid. We had a solid last few laps, but Russell did an amazing job on the exits, mainly from La Source, which is
Yeah.
turn one. He just always got the great exit and I think he was marginally faster than Hamilton on the straights. He had less wing probably, which then just Hamilton, he was very close, but never could really overtake.
And going back to what you said, that the gaps have been
Yeah.
so small since Imola. It honestly hasn't felt like the same season. Like,
Yeah,
I
it
feel like
hasn't.
It's been like a dream almost. Like, oh, when are we gonna wake up and Max Verstappen is going to win by 15 seconds again?
True.
It's like we've forgotten what it's like when
Very.
there are actually fights for the win. It's incredible.
Yeah,
There you go.
I agree. Like 100%. It's just, it almost seems like a gear was switched
Yeah.
and suddenly everything, like, firstly, Ferrari seems to be competing. Then McLaren started to turn up.
Miami win.
Yeah. And on pace.
And
which,
on pace.
Yeah, and then Mercedes joining the fight, which, yeah, it's been amazing.
I have a question for you to
Sure.
get a bit into the predicting side of things.
Let's go.
What do you think will be... Well, actually, two parts to this question. What will be the construction championship order at the end of the year? And what will be the pace order? Because now Mercedes are up there, but they're still last. So
I like Constructors Championship. Let's predict the top 4, right?
that's
Because the rest, it's impossible to guess sometimes. Because little things make a huge difference. And
because Haas is looking good right now.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think McLaren is gonna win the Constructors Championship.
Okay.
I think Mercedes is gonna be P2, and Red Bull's gonna be P3, and Ferrari P4 in the constructors.
Wow.
With the pace, I think it's gonna be very, very close between the 4. But somehow I think that
Yeah, let's say we're talking about Abu Dhabi pace.
Abu Dhabi pace. Yeah, I think McLaren's gonna be first. I think they're gonna be first with Red Bull,
Okay.
honestly. And then I believe the second fight is gonna be Ferrari and Mercedes, which are gonna be similar pace. Because I think Mercedes is doing amazing steps, but I still think that Ferrari is gonna somehow salvage, their season by.
But still, they will still end up P4.
Yeah, because it's gonna be late in the season, I believe. Because looking at the car, it seems like their problems are not super short-term fixes. But I believe they're gonna find their feet by Abu Dhabi, the same as they did like last year, sort of.
Yeah.
What do you think? How would you predict the order?
Well, also just looking what we have now with Mercedes being 150 points behind P1. Wow. You said P2 for them, right?
P3.
Oh, P3.
Did I?
Well, time will tell.
I didn't. I said P2. Yeah. Anyways.
They're exactly 100 points behind McLaren, who are P2 right now. This is not easy. But I will honestly also go with McLaren as P1 in the constructors.
They've got 2 drivers.
They've got two drivers. Norris and Piastri have been doing great. And I think that will continue. And I will be as bold as to say Ferrari will pull everything together and they will overtake Red Bull as well.
Wow, that's a bold prediction.
It's the bold. Yeah, I don't.
That we're gonna have to do some betting on that.
Yeah. Saying that after, like.
I mean, it could happen. It's about unlocking the performance.
It's about unlocking the performance. But then I will say that Red Bull is P3 and Mercedes stay P4. But but pace-wise...
Bold.
Yeah. Almost as bold as Mercedes P2. But pace-wise, I would say Red Bull P1 in Abu Dhabi. I think they, towards the end of the season, they somehow managed to bring it back. I will say Ferrari P2 in Abu Dhabi.
Oh,
McLaren
wow.
P3 and Mercedes P4.
Wow.
And we're back to the start of the season. I think we're going to do a circle.
Are those your Ferrari fanboy glasses, or
we're gonna
seems like you're putting them on?
It's gonna be a full circle moment.
Okay.
For the grid. Then this is very delusional, by the way. But
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't complain because Hamilton is going into the Ferrari the next season, which...
Because I think that despite Mercedes doing so well right now, I don't know if it's enough to pull them up the standings.
I think, if we look at the fact why I'm saying this is there's many talks that, Red Bull will revert to an older spec of the Red Bull for Perez, and because they're desperate to find the second driver performance, right? And with Red Bull not being the quickest car anymore, or dependent on the track at least, I find it difficult that Verstappen is going to consistently outscore the likes of two very good Mercedes drivers that are going to extract every bit of performance. I don't know. It's open and it's in the stars, but
it's a very good point.
yeah.
I just kind of threw it out there. Not a lot of thought behind it, but I think bottom line is just looking at the rest of the calendar here, or here actually, we have some very exciting races ahead of us.
We do.
We have Monza.
Oh gosh, which one are you the most excited for?
It's a very good question. I think, well, Baku never disappoints. Either.
True.
We still haven't had Baku this year, but I'm gonna let's say Monza, hoping for an Italian home performance.
Yeah.
Which one is your go-to? Or of course Brazil.
Yes, I wanted to say Brazil. Man, Brazil is gonna be. I'm really excited for Brazil because Brazil delivers. And I feel because it's a short circuit, it could suit different cars. Yeah, I think it's gonna be super interesting.
And of course, there's Singapore.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas. I think Las Vegas was a big surprise last year with how entertaining the race was.
It'll be an interesting one because I hope this year finally we have no drama with potholes and with the track being oiled up kind of from just being basically just assembled days or months before Formula 1 cars just racing on it. But how would you also my question is, how would you rate this season? How many seasons have you seen live as of your
as of my very
fan career?
my fan career hasn't been as long as yours. I'll admit that. It's been very short, actually. I am somewhat ashamed to call myself, well, I don't call myself, but I am a DTS fan, which is a bit of a dirty word in the F1 community. But the first season that I saw whole, I saw fully live was the 2021 season.
Oh wow, what a season to start though.
What a season to start with. I was very spoiled to start with that.
Yep.
And I think it's only logical to say that I would, from best to worst, I would put it 2021, 2024, 2022, and 2023.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue with that.
With 2021, it was an amazing title fight, of course.
True.
Plus, it was more about the 1v1 of Max and Lewis, which is quite different from what we have now, which is more teams competing, which is also entertaining in other ways. But in 2022, we at least had the Ferrari hope at the start. But last year was just dreadful.
Yeah.
But I haven't lived through as many as you. So what about you? How would you compare this?
Well, I also had a pretty good season to start with. My first season that I watched probably wasn't whole. Okay, 2007 I started watching, but 2008 was...
Quite a bit before my time.
Yeah.
Quite a bit before.
But 2008 I saw whole. I mean, I don't remember much because I was very little. I was 8, in fact. And I mean, I remember being very ecstatic because you had Hamilton fighting with Massa. It was interesting. But from the seasons I remember, it's an interesting one. I would rate it somewhere in the middle because I have witnessed seasons like 2010, 2012, which were great seasons. 2009 was a great storyline. 2008 was a lot of fun to watch. I think 2014, the Silver Wars. 2014, maybe 2016. 2017, 2018 was a great season because we had Vettel versus Hamilton, Ferrari versus Mercedes, and at least for first, 15 races of 20, it was very interesting and close. Then Hamilton always had the edge over Vettel, and it was an amazing season. 2019, a little more dominant, but then towards the second half of the season, we had the Ferrari master engine with Mattia Binotto in charge. A ridiculous engine, which was illegal pretty much. Yeah. 2020 had very different circumstances because we were very happy that we could at least see a race. and it turned very late. But it was a Mercedes domination, but we had some cool stuff. But yeah, I would, like, in terms of 1 to 10, I would rate it probably a 7. The second half of the first half was probably a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10. But the first,
for my standards, coming from 2 seasons of Verstappen dominance, I would put it at least an 8.
Fair.
At the moment.
Very fair. But I'm trying not to let in the recency bias.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because the first 7 races, we were in a similar situation, thinking, oh, are we going to get the same as last year? Are we screwed again? But how wrong were we? And we're happy that we were wrong.
And we're happy to have covered
the
races. And we're happy to have you with us.
Exactly.
For this season.
And before we go, I think we need to recap. Do you remember your prediction?
I do not. I sadly do not.
I remember mine. I didn't, but I remember. I thought that Verstappen is going to make contact with someone coming through the field. And I am not going to take the point because he didn't. Which is surprising because he didn't overtake as much as we probably thought he would. But the driver of the day.
And I suspect I might have said something about Sergio Perez doing very well.
Yeah, well,
which if that was what I said, I think it might have been maybe a podium or maybe a good qualifying. Then qualifying P2 after all that's been happening, I would take something. But driver of the weekend.
Who would you get?
Of course, I think this weekend we had a lot of contenders. Oscar Piastri was driving brilliantly, especially considering the broken rib. Hamilton was on it. But just as a price of consolation, I will say George Russell.
Fair.
I hope he hears this and feels a little better.
I mean, that would be good, but we would feel a little better too. But
who would you choose as your driver of the weekend?
I would choose Lewis Hamilton, just purely because of the driving. I felt like he just had the upper hand over everyone in terms of the racing. He showed the masterclass. He showed why he's a 7-time world champion. But I would come and say that both Russell and Hamilton had 10 out of 10 performances.
Yeah.
I don't think they could have done anything better.
It's going to Mercedes.
Yeah.
This weekend.
Again.
Again.
Which we haven't heard for a good while.
Yeah. But, well, let's just hope that the rest of the season carries on with the entertainment that we've been seeing, with the fights for the wins, for the podiums, and with less drama, of course, and less toxicity and everything like that.
And just better racing.
Good old-fashioned racing. And our takes.
Exactly.
On what happens on and off the grid.
Yeah, and let's sum it up. We're up for an amazing second half of the season, so make sure you guys are watching. Make sure you stay tuned because we will be covering everything that's happening.
As you can see, our production quality is slowly but surely growing.
Exactly. We can't promise this for the next podcast, but we will see what we can do about it.
Either way, we hope that you enjoyed and see you after the Dutch Grand Prix.
Or maybe even before. We will see. But
we'll see.
In the podcast, we will see you after the Dutch Grand Prix. Take care. And thank you for watching us and staying with us. Take care. Bye.
Bye.